I've heard and seen in many nationalist spaces with a term thrown around called Christian nationalism, where it wants to keep the faith of the country Christian and maintain it as the number one priority of the people that are Christians, as well maintain the country of that nation. However, this is very contradictory since Christianity is a globalist religion, not a nationalist religion, since it tries to appeal to other Christians, hence why lower IQ paired world countries, when Western nations introduced Christianity to them, adopted the religion into their country, and yet they're still poor and dumb. I think this is seriously needs addressing, that nationalism is very different from just having a religion in the nation in common, since I would say racially, Christianity promotes race mixing and a black Christian can marry a white Christian, so therefore not keeping the tribalness, as well as Christian NGO groups pushing for mass immigration within the West, as long as they are Christian, or more empathy from racially cooked white people. So what is Christian nationalism, and why does it exist? Or how I would consider it just civic nationalism. With the West increasingly decline, many people have been wanting to return to Christianity to prefer European traditions, including the practice of attending church. For example, figures like Nick Fuentes are inclined to adopt a religious political ideology such as national Catholicism. However, this would be a difficult stance to take firmly, since the church is always right or considered always right and must be followed. Yet some Catholics do not like or even support the Pope or the Catholic Church, so perhaps it's best to decide what to stand for, even if that means risking disagreement. I would say this is contradictory since I believe that Christianity, or any of its denominations for that matter, are not compatible with nationalism. I would even say when it comes down to civnats, is that if everyone has religious values in common, it brings people to a peaceful understanding of each other. This, however, is a fallacy, since humans are a biological factor into any society, no matter what religion they are. But even if, let's say, I turned India to Christianity, it would still be the same and would still have an IQ of around 70, with low impulse control and high testosterone population. The Congo is 95% Christian, yet has the highest grape capital in Africa, so clearly them having morals from Christianity doesn't help. So I would argue that it doesn't help the black population of Africa. Point being, when people have an unsavoury genes with a population decimate from decades of first cousin or brotherly marriage, if you did with just Christian immigration, not help your native population, inviting people from outside of the tribe. Hence why more tribal religion, such as paganism within Europe, is rising, since Christianity is not tribal enough, which I will talk about later. I also seen many conservatives cooking with their Judeo-Christian value, and that Israel is their last bastion, which wasn't the case. These so-called Judeo-Christian values are a convenient myth, peddled by neocons to justify endless wars and foreign aid funnels, all while ignoring the actual history of Christianity's roots in opposition to Pharisaic Judaism. The real Jerusalem wasn't some black Israelite fantasy or a Zionist theme park. It was a crossroads of empires, conquered and reconquered, with Jesus flipping tables on the money changers who ran the show. But nah, today's choice cooks would rather lap as an honorary Hebrews, sending their tax dollars to bomb Gaza while preaching turn the other cheek at home. It's just a geopolitical grift, and the real chosen people are the ones pulling the strings behind the curtain. I think somewhere down along the line, I think people interpret it as some sort of holy war, and people just went along with it. Whether it's some civnat boomer thinking he's a good person for being anti-racist or cooking to other groups in order to gain followers, I think the empathy of white people and the decades of white guilt and shame have rotted people's brains to the point in using their religion as a means to cope, including civnats in cases where, on Twitter, a post titled "A Response to Alex Koshman Incident on X/Twitter," also on American Krogan Substack, addresses a controversy sparked by Alex Koshman's ex-post featuring himself and his 13-year-old adopted black son. American Krogan describes this as revealing a divide within Christian nationalism. One faction prioritizes faith over race, advocating for disregarding ethnic differences in Christian identity, while another pushes for white racial tribalism. Iverson aligns with the latter, arguing that the incident highlights a growing frustration among white Christians against what he sees as forced racial integration and the erasure of biological kinship. Iverson critiques a response from figures like Black Pasture Virgil Walker, who frames the debate as Christianity versus biological determinism, emphasizing unity in Christ over ethnic ties and calling for guardrails against hostility. Similarly, Joe Barry warns of the ethnic hatred infiltrating Christian nationalism. American Krogan rejects these views, claiming they impose moral prescriptions that bully Christians into ignoring race, akin to leftist tactics on social issues. He points to rude replies to Koshman's post, but counters that the faith-first side has long condemned racial awareness as sinful, contributing to white self-loathing and community destruction. The post delves into historical and biblical contexts, noting Christianity's past role in suppressing European folk customs, and reinterpreting scriptures to support modern altruism, like interracial adoptions. Iverson argues that verses like James chapter 1 verse 27 on caring for orphans do not mandate cross-ethnic adoption, which he views as a recent phenomenon tied to post-war guilt and ethnic replacement. He cites examples such as Charlize Theron, Amy Coney Barrett, and Sandra Bullock adopting non-white children, portraying these as virtue signaling that exacerbates identity crises for adoptees and forces societal exceptions. Iverson highlights broader societal manipulations, including media promotion of miscegenation, migration policies, and historical laws like US Naturalization Act of 1790, restricting citizenship to free white persons. He praises figures like Matt Walsh for prioritising family-oriented universal empathy and welcomes cynicism, seeing universal Christianity as incompatible with biological-based nationalism. Krogan concludes that forcing such views creates division, and recognising racial realities does not equate to sin or hatred, applicable across religious lines. This is what is missing from these types of movements in CivNat spaces. Lack of tribalness and Christianity's lack of it, even. I would spiral into a schizo rant about Jews creating Christianity in order to control white people as a replacement for Noahidism, but I think American Krogan pointed out how you can control the subversion of Christianity via a crusade of expelling foreign invaders from our lands, as what happened during the Caliphate many centuries ago, just as mass immigration is happening right now within the West. Paganism seeming like a better option for tribalism, though I don't know much about it. I do know that it does not have the subversive nature compared to the other Abrahamic religions, if that were the case. A lot of the churches are not being attended since the government are not spending money on maintaining them and are spending money on other things, like such as wasting it on donkey charities more than abuse survivors. If civilians do not stop dodging or ignore the fact that race exists, which they're just as bad as the left and just as right, liberal in that sense, then it will push more people towards this type of nationalism. In my opinion, you either are a nationalist or you're not. No, you don't need to kick Abdul out of his corner shop, and no, you don't need to optics cut by saying if anyone is British just by being Christian or being here for 5 years paying tax. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video about me talking about this very controversial topic about Christian nationalism and why, in my opinion, I don't think it technically exists and why it's not compatible, for example, like something with nationalism and also to do with Christianity. And I do think as well, with to do with paganism, obviously a lot of people say there's some weird satanic stuff in, because obviously there is a variant to do with National Socialists who are like paganism, they go into like Satanism, which Satanism and paganism isn't the exact same thing. But again, I need to do a bit more research on that. But I do think that being pro your own people and also having the tribalism is very much needed within the West. I think that there's too much cuckoldery in politics and also to do with religion and also to do with the subversiveness. But again, like I said, I don't want to go on a schizo rant near the end of or within this video. And as well, if you want to click on these videos here where I talk about other aspects of this topic and as well to do with religion and politics, I'll talk about those a little bit more in detail. And before you click on this video, I have a link in the description below with links to my other channels and my Discord as well.